Hi friends, May 1967, Naxalbari in West Bengal. Jungle Santhal, a landless farmer, wakes up in the morning, looking at his land which has been occupied forcefully by landlords and jamindars. A piece of land which rightfully belonged to him. Determined to get his piece of land back, he gathers a group of landless farmers like him to reoccupy his own land. The horrifying and frightful incident that followed after that sent shivers across the country, which led to the Naxalite movement in West Bengal. So what was this Naxalite movement? Who were the zamindars? Who were these local landlords? And who was Jungle Santhal? Today, let us dive deep to find out what actually happened on May 1967. 20 years had passed and Britishers had already left the Indian soil. But the zamindari land revenue system remained back. The zamindars and local landlords collected 89% of land revenue from these poor farmers on behalf of the Britishers. As per as the permanent land revenue system introduced by Cornwallis in the 1700s, the zamindars were recognized as permanent owners of the land. The zamindars were typically members of the landed aristocracy or wealthy merchants who had supported the British in this system. Poor farmers worked on their own land as slaves, against which they received a mere sum of 11% for their own produce. The Britishers ensured that the poor remained poor. Post-independence, the zamindars continued with this dirty practice. And now, with the Britishers gone, they had 89% as their full share. And slowly, it started turning into an extortion racket. Apart from collecting cash, now they were taking favors in kind, and extortion became limitless. The peasants revolted, refused to pay taxes, boycotted cultivation, and even petitioned the government to save their interests. But nothing happened. The zamindars retaliated with terrible atrocities with the help of local goons and political activists. The Indira Gandhi government played a crucial role in radicalizing the rural masses and convincing them to join the freedom struggle. On one side, independent India was enjoying freedom to their fullest. But on the other side, these poor farmers were yet to get their independence. Zamindars became more and more flamboyant with their wealth, wasting it on wine, women, and gambling, while these poor peasants were unable to make the two ends meet. Mothers slept hungry, children had one meal to their fate, and some fathers took their lives without a morsel of food in their stomach. It was like the British-induced famine still prevailed in the villages of West Bengal. Most villagers started believing in the fact that this economic hardship is their birthright, while on the other side, some brave men stood up for their rights for the land. And this gives birth to the Naxalite movement in West Bengal. The name Naxalite comes from the name of a place named Naxalbari, a small village in North Bengal which shares its borders with Nepal. On 25th May 1967 in Naxalbari, a group of tribal villagers known as Adivasis stood up for their land rights against the zamindars under the leadership of Jungle Santhal. So who was Jungle Santhal? Jungle Santhal was born in 1925 in a village named Hatighasa in Naxalbari. His father was a mere tea garden worker who worked very hard to bring meal on the table for Jungle and his brothers and sisters. Struggle and suffering has been a part of his life ever since childhood. After his father's death, he started working as a shared cropper to feed his family. He joined the Kisan Sabha, a peasants' front of the Communist Party of India in 1952, where he gained basic knowledge of politics. Later, he turned into a political activist and contested elections from 1957 to 1962 on behalf of the Communist Party in India. He also served in prison several times because of his political career. On 18th March 1967, the Peasants' Council of Darjeeling District, under the leadership of Jungle Santhal, prepared to redistribute the land to the landless farmers and prepare for an armed struggle against the zamindars and the landlords. The council was in response to the United Front government formation, which the participants of the Peasants' Council saw as too moderate and betrayal of their party vision. This led the peasants across the area gradually rising up against the oppressive landlords and establishing their own revolutionary committees. Santhal and his men forcefully started capturing their lands back, which were rightfully given by the courts under the tenancy laws. When a police party headed by Inspector Sonam Wangdi arrived at the spot, some peasant leaders ambushed the entire police team with just bows and arrows. In the conflict, many members of the group was killed and Inspector Sonam Wongdi lost his life. The police immediately jumped into action and as an act of retaliation started firing bullets on them, which ended up taking many lives. This bloodshed continued for 72 days. Men, women and children lost their lives and Naxalbari was bleeding. This sent shivers across the entire nation. Eventually the killing ceased, but the revolt continued. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, the founder of modern China, the all-powerful Mao Zedong, was on the rise. He started providing ideological inspiration for the Naxalbari movement, advocating the Indian peasants and lower-class tribals to overthrow the present government. 13 December 1967, a meeting was arranged with the Chinese Communist Party and the Naxal leaders in Beijing. Very less are known about the agendas of this meeting, but the primary objective was to use surprise attacks to seize weapons from policemen and use superior forces to remove small groups of police force at each battle. Mao said during the meeting that India should rely on its workers, farmers, to solve their problem. We do not rely on Gandhi or Nehru to solve our problem. Thereafter, a training ground was arranged in Tibet to train the Naxalites. The Naxalites learned to manufacture arms and ammunitions and handle explosives along with guerrilla warfare. Every Indian newspaper read, a red area of rural revolutionary armed struggle has been established in India. The motivation was such that students started leaving schools and colleges to join the movement with a clear mission to assassinate the upper class. West Bengal was burning. It had to come to this point someday, with a clear mission to assassinate the class enemies such as landlords, businessmen, university teachers, police officers, and even politicians of the right and left. Come July 1971, Indira Gandhi took advantage of the president's rule to mobilize the Indian army against the Naxalites and launched a colossal combined army and police counter-insurgency operations. The operation was termed as Steeplechase Operation, which killed hundreds of Naxalites and imprisoned more than 20,000 suspects and cadres, including senior leaders. This was the awakening of the emergency period which was coming. By that time, the government led many crackdowns on the movement, and by 1973, the main cadres of Naxalites have been either eliminated or behind bars. The movement fractured into more than 40 separate small groups. As a result, instead of the popular armed struggle in the countryside, individual terrorism in Calcutta became the principal method of struggle. Every street was filled with goons, collecting the so-called hafta from rich people, businessmen and traders. The extensive police operation began and Santhal was arrested and moved to Alipur Central Jail in Calcutta. While in prison, the government offered to release all the Naxalite prisoners only if they had joined the masses and gave up their ideal for armed revolution. But Santhal and his men turned down the request, upon which his wife and children were deprived of food and shelter later. Not much is known of his life after release from prison. But the little known facts are, Santhal suffered depression and alcoholism. He died of public shame and disgrace, and never getting to see his country change for the better. He died on 4th December 1988, and it's all forgotten history. Well, that's all for today. We'll meet with another interesting episode very soon. Till then, stay curious and keep exploring.